So someone sent in an interesting question that talks about our values and how we make decisions. So I thought I would read it. So it's about filial piety and how it relates to compassion. So filial piety is a term that you might use in Asia. In the States, it would be, responsibility for our parents, our connection to our parents, okay? So he says, the nature of compassion has always eluded me, but I'm finding it particularly tricky when it comes to how we treat our families. I know Buddhism teaches us that we are interconnected and that the stranger on the street was perhaps at one point our father, mother, sibling, teacher in a past life. Even from a scientific point of view, one can see sense in this. The question then becomes, why are we so much more willing to show love and compassion towards our current family, but most of us are unwilling to help strangers? Regardless, there are some of us who love neither strangers nor our own families. This is especially evident in the U.S., where our seniors are often neglected and sent to nursing homes, and young people are increasingly likely to abandon a sick family member if it inconveniences them. This is partly for this reason that I moved to Japan nearly 10 years ago. In stark contrast to our broken and scattered families back home, Japanese households generally include at least one grandparent, and families who don't live together are still within biking distance. This Confucian way of thinking, of valuing and respecting our parents, is obviously not limited to Japan alone, as many other Asian countries are actually trying to promote old ways by passing laws which require parental visitation at least several times per month, or have other such programs trying to help the elderly. So I think that's interesting, because I know in Singapore the people are now less likely to help their parents, so the government is passing laws that say you have to help support your parents when they're old. Okay. The problem I'm having involves these two radical viewpoints: filial piety, or responsibility for our parents, on one hand, and the more familiar make-your-own-way mentality, which I was brought up with, and which dominates much of Western culture. Some might even term this selfishness, because although filial piety and individualism are not necessarily mutually exclusive, which is a good point, okay, more young people are clamoring towards financial stability and success, often at the expense of their families. Our whole culture in the West has this I, me, my mantra that we like to chant. I fancy it myself, although I like to imagine that I am less selfish these days than in the past. In my college days, I could only think about the places I want to travel to, the things I want to see, or the fancy house I would have after graduating. I could have all these things and more if I only worked hard enough. After all, this was the road to happiness, or so all my teachers told me, and what reason did I have to doubt them? However, the more I continued on this path of desire, the more miserable I became. The hard work and sacrifice led to my dreams becoming fulfilled, but as anyone who has followed this path knows, there was also a deep sense of dissatisfaction and unhappiness waiting at the end. The dreams I thought would bring happiness were only replaced by still loftier ones. All the while, friends and family suffered terribly at my expense, and this clearly was not compassion. But what of those people who genuinely and passionately seek to improve the lives of others? There are those who work with the hope of alleviating others' suffering. The doctor who helps the poor, the farmer who tries his best to keep toxins from contaminating the water and soil, etc. In my case, working for self-gain and satisfaction were bringing nothing but misery, so I decided to try this other route instead. I began searching for a way I could be of best service to others, but it wasn't until years of trial and error and the great Japan Tohoku earthquake of 2011 that I found it. The quake and following tsunami destroyed nearly half of the city I was living in at the time, and everyone suddenly abandoned the area. By mere chance, some farmers contacted me, saying that they needed some Japanese to English translation work done in order to send radiation information, to send radiation information abroad. Obviously, the Japanese government was heavily censoring any attempts at publishing it domestically. This job of translating quickly led to another, and before long, word had spread out, and I had a self-made business. I was actually helping people with my language skills, even long after moving to the safety of Tokyo myself. Also, as my work continued, I'd learned more about the true nature of Japan and what problems their agricultural sector faced. For whatever reason, more Japanese farms are being abandoned every year, and the younger generation has little or no interest in pursuing this type of work. If this trend continues, Japan will quickly face starvation in the immediate future unless they import a vast proportion of their food from abroad, from many countries who have less than adequate food safety standards themselves. I wanted to do something to help, and eventually I had an idea. I am writing the Abbey because I have been teaching and translating for many years now, but it was only recently that I found a way to combine my skills to help others by starting my own agriculture-based kindergarten. My hope is that kids will develop an early interest in nutrition and love of the land, perhaps increasing the number of farmers in this area in the future. This may not be the best way I can be of use in helping others, but it's a beautiful start and exciting to see my dream take shape. And for once, this is a dream involving others, not just myself. However, I am uneasy. Although my desire to help others is great, my family back in the States currently suffers. My sister suffers from a nervous system disease. My father is in poor health and doesn't have the money to pay for medication. And my grandfather is living alone, restricted to his chair most days and barely getting by. I know my family wants the best for me, and although they carry on without me and do not complain, I also know my homecoming would help ease their burden. However, I also have a deep desire to help others here in Japan, and moreover, I feel my skills, my passions, and the circumstances of my life have prepared me for this. I can't help thinking that returning home would be a waste of my true potential in alleviating the suffering of others, even if it would help ease that of my own family. How can one help others while still maintaining their duty to their family? From a Buddhist viewpoint, is it selfish to help others not only in our own family, to help others not in our own family while our own family suffers? Okay. I did my own thinking on the matter and thought about the story of the Buddha himself and how he left home to pursue spiritual enlightenment. I'm sure his father suffered terrible fear and hardship after he left, and no doubt the Buddha himself was aware of the effects that his actions would have. And yet, if it were not for the Buddha's sacrifice, the way to escape suffering might not be known to us. Okay. So, my thoughts on the issue. I think this thing is people are going to make different decisions depending on different cases and different situations. So it's not a an answer that is one size fits all. Because people's relationship with their family is different, their relationship with their work is different, and clearly your motivation is a chief, part of this. Where can you be of the most benefit? Where is it best to direct your own energies? Okay, so I think here there's a few things, a few criteria I look at when I try and make decisions. So in this one, in what situation would I be of the greatest benefit to the most people in the long term? Yeah, and to see that, because there may be many situations in which I could benefit people, but what's going to be of the greatest benefit to the greatest number in the longest term, rather than the smallest benefit to a few people in the short term. Okay, so that's one way I look at situations. Let's look at the big picture and see where is it best to direct my energy. Okay, and then also to look at which kind of the various options, in which of them will I be able to keep best my ethical conduct the best? Like in his case, would, let's say, going back to the U.S., encourage him to do actions that weren't so ethical, whereas staying in Japan would not, or vice versa. Okay? And then also a thing is to see that there may be various people who needs help, other people, your family and all, but there's many ways to give help. Yeah, and in all those ways of giving help, you don't necessarily need to physically be there. So in the case of his family, if his father needs money for medicine, he can send the money for the medicine. Yeah. If his grandfather is lonely, he can have Skype calls with his grandfather on a regular basis. If he needs more contact with his sister, now with Skype, have more, go and have more contact with your siblings and your family members there. Or could he be in the States and run his program by Skype? That might be a little bit more difficult, yeah? So to see, what are the different ways that you can benefit different people, even though you only have one body and can be only in one place at one time, okay? And to not feel guilty that you can't do everything. Yeah. And then also, there are some situations where we can't, physically help. There may not be anything for us specific to do, or situations where we could help, but what we could help with is actually comparatively minor compared to the help we can give in other situations. And so here, when we can't give a lot of direct help, then to stay in touch and keep our compassion with those people by doing the meditations on love and compassion, and especially the taking and giving meditation. Okay? So even though we may not be able to physically be with somebody, who needs help, we can certainly, through our hearts and through our practice and our prayers and our taking and giving meditation and so on, offer a lot of help. Okay? So I think one of the main things in this is, is weighing the things and then acknowledging, I don't have two bodies, I can't do both things. So I look at, what's best to do for the greatest number of people in the long term. How can I help the other people in other ways? Are there other ways to help various kinds of people? And how can I keep my love and compassion for everybody going through my practice? And I think one of the big things is not to feel guilty about whatever decision we make. To look at it closely, to look at our motivation closely, and to realize, we can't do everything at once and we have to make a choice. And that's it. And because we can't be two places at once, it doesn't mean we're bad people. It doesn't mean we're selfish. It doesn't mean we're deficient. It's just the way things are. Yeah? Because I find so often that people blame themselves for not being able to do things that are impossible to do. Which is a waste of energy, isn't it? Yeah? So much better to, think about what's good to do, make a decision, help everybody as much as you can, and accept what the situation is.